Ex-NFL players rotting in prison in 2024. Dana Stubblefield was born in Cleves, Ohio, on November 14, 1970. He played football at Taylor High School in North Bend, Ohio, before accepting a scholarship to the University of Kansas. He dominated on the defensive end at the university for 4 years before being selected by the San Francisco 49ers with the 26th pick in the first round of the 1993 NFL Draft. He played in the NFL with 3 different teams from 1993 to 2003. He was Defensive Rookie of the Year in 1993 and Defensive Player of the Year in 1997. He was an All-Pro 3 times and won 1 Super Bowl ring in 1994. On April 8, 2015, Stubblefield met a 31-year-old intellectually disabled woman on a babysitting website. He convinced her to come to his Santa Clara County, California home the next day for a job interview. He spent 20 minutes interviewing the woman, and then she left. He texted her that he wanted to pay her for her time, so she returned to his residence. Once she arrived, he threatened her and took advantage of her. When he finished, he gave her $80 and sent her on her way. After leaving his home, she visited a police department to report the crime. DNA evidence linked Stubblefield to the assault. In May 2016, he was charged with several offenses related to the incident. At trial, he claimed their encounter was consensual, but the jury didn't fall for it. In July 2020, he was convicted of false imprisonment, oral copulation by force, and several other charges. 3 months later, the 49-year-old was sentenced to 15 years to life.
This is all the news you're not going to see on TV today, but it's going to be simplified in 60 seconds. If you or anybody you know uses Cash App, they are now saying that Cash App users can receive $2,500 from a $15 million settlement, which is crazy. So basically, they're saying that if you used Cash App since 2018, you might be eligible for this $15 million settlement because of 2 different data breaches, which is wild. Middle school is now banning all black clothing, and they're citing it to mental health concerns. So this middle school that's located in El Paso is now implementing this controversial policy banning students from wearing all black clothing, and they're basically just saying, hey, it's because of mental health. It is now official that Donald Trump and Kamala Harris will be debating on September the 10th, so get ready for that. And then, by the way, the most active meteor shower of the year is happening literally tonight on August the 11th, so make sure you don't miss it. For anybody that wants to absolutely make sure you do not miss the meteor shower tonight, there's going to be up to 100 per hour, and I'm gonna go live and stream the entire thing on TikTok. So all you have to do is just make sure you save this video or just add me so you can come back and you don't forget.
How do a woman and a 6-year-old child both suspiciously die in the same house 2 days apart? This is one of those unsolved cases that once you hear about it, you just never stop thinking about it. I'm gonna give you guys some quick background information on the people that are involved in today's case. Also, just a heads up, this case does discuss someone who potentially may have unalived themselves. So just a warning if that's not something you want to hear about. Max Shakai was a 6-year-old boy. His parents were Dina and Jonas Shakai, but they had divorced. They're no longer together. And his father, Jonah, had started a new relationship with a woman named Rebecca Zahau. Jonah Shakai was a very wealthy CEO, and when his relationship with Rebecca Zahau got more serious, Rebecca left her job and was kind of like a stay-at-home girlfriend, and Rebecca would watch Max a lot of the time when Max was over at his dad's house. Dina, Jonah's ex-wife and Max's mom, does not like this. She thinks if her son is over at his dad's house, he should be spending time with his dad, not his dad's girlfriend. Also, Dina does not like Rebecca. She thinks that she's pretty much a gold digger. So this entire situation is filled with tension from like all sides. Going into July of 2011, Jonah, Max, and Rebecca were staying at Jonah's summer house, but this place was really like a summer mansion. This place was huge. And on this day, Jonah went to the gym, leaving his 6-year-old son in the care of his girlfriend, Rebecca, which he had done so many times before. But this time, it ended in tragedy. Rebecca said that she left the room for 1 minute to use the bathroom, and while she was in the bathroom, she heard a large crashing sound. So she runs out and she finds 6-year-old Max laying at the bottom of the stairs, completely unresponsive. I'm green screening, which I never do, but I think this will be the best way to show you guys what happened. Somehow, Max had gone over this railing, bringing this chandelier down with him. He was found laying, at the bottom of the staircase after going off this railing, and the chandelier was down with him, so he's just laying covered in the glass of the chandelier. How Max happened to go over the side of the railing, bringing the chandelier down with him, has never been explained because no one was around to see it. It's a mystery to this day. Rebecca attempted to give Max CPR as they waited for the ambulance to show up, but Max was in bad shape. He had severe brain damage, and by the time he was in the hospital, he was in a coma. Rebecca could be heard multiple times that day after this happened by multiple people saying, "Dina is going to kill me." Dina is Max's mom, if you don't remember, who hates Rebecca. Like family does in a family emergency, Jonah's brother Adam flew out immediately to support his brother and his nephew who's fighting for his life in the hospital. At this point, it had been one full day since Max was admitted into the hospital and he wasn't showing much improvement. So Adam and Rebecca, who don't really know each other, go back to Jonah's summer mansion to get some sleep while Jonah and Dina stayed with their son in the hospital. There would be a second tragedy in the same house that very same night. In the very early morning hours, Adam called 911 to report that he had found Rebecca's body and she had unalived herself. Her body was found outside her bedroom's balcony by a rope. Her ankles were tied up in rope. Her wrists were tied behind her back in rope in like really complex knots. There was a t-shirt wrapped around her head and stuffed into her mouth, and Rebecca was not wearing a single article of clothing. So this is the balcony that Rebecca was found outside of. This is outside of the house, and she's not wearing a single article of clothing. I've never heard of a woman or anyone unaliving themselves this way. Her wrists are tied behind her back. Her ankles are completely bound. This is bizarre, but it just gets weirder. Rebecca had 4 instances of head trauma. There was blood found throughout her room. There were signs that she may have been SA'd, possibly by a sharp weapon, and a sharp weapon was found in the house that was covered on bloods on all sides. The entire thing had blood on it. A neighbor also says that they heard a woman screaming for help in the middle of the night, but they didn't call 911. That's annoying. If you hear someone screaming for help in the middle of the night, please call 911. Probably the strangest detail in this entire case is a note that was found written on Rebecca's bedroom door in black paint that read, "She saved him, can you save her?" Like what? That sounds like something that someone in Criminal Minds or a horror movie would leave behind. What is that? It is also believed that that note was written by someone close to 6 feet tall. Rebecca was a shorter woman. She was about 5'3", but you know who was close to 6 feet tall? The only other person that was on the property that night, Rebecca's boyfriend's brother, Adam Shakai. Another piece of evidence that might point to Adam's involvement are the knots that were used to tie Rebecca's wrist behind her back. They were complex knots and they were similar to sailing knots, and Adam was a tugboat captain. Tragically, only 3 days after Rebecca passed away, Max tragically also succumbed to his injuries in the hospital, making 2 strange deaths in the same house a couple days apart. And very quickly, Max's passing was ruled as a tragic accident, and Rebecca's was ruled that she had unalived herself because she was feeling guilty over what happened to Max, and they quickly just closed both cases. What's so odd about this is at this point when Rebecca passed away is Max was still alive, and they were hopeful that he was going to pull through. So why would she unalive herself if there wasn't really anything at that point to feel guilty for? Let me know what you think about that. That's just my thought process. Rebecca's family feels very strongly that this was foul play and Rebecca did not unalive herself, but also Max's mother, Dana, thinks that Max was also a victim of foul play. And actually, Rebecca's family and Dana both hired their own professionals to look into their loved ones' passings, and pretty much everyone that's looked at both passings, but especially Rebecca's, have said that, you know, this was foul play, there's something sketchy going on here. Well, everyone but the actual sheriff's office that handled this case, because like you know, they closed the case and it has remained closed. Another super strange detail about Rebecca's passing is the night that she passed away, after she would have already been gone, someone used the computer in Rebecca's room and also Rebecca's phone to delete a voicemail off of Rebecca's phone. To this day, they never uncovered what this voicemail was. It's a huge unanswered question in this case. Rebecca's family actually took Adam Shakai to civil court to hold him liable for Rebecca's death. This is different than criminal court because although Adam was found guilty in civil court, he won't, spend any jail time because it's civil court, like wrongful death, not criminal court. With the evidence that they had in civil court, Adam was held liable for Rebecca's death, which I find extremely interesting, but the sheriff's office just dismissed it and have not reopened the case. This case is so complicated. There's so much information. You could look into it for hours and hours and hours, and I suggest you guys do. I really want to know what you guys think about all of this. Do you think that Max was the victim of foul play? There is some evidence to suggest that the injuries that he had wouldn't have happened from the fall. There's also a lot of evidence that suggests that it was just a tragic accident. Also, really the only person in the house was Rebecca and also her younger sister. So why would Rebecca do something to Max? Also, do you think Rebecca was a victim of foul play or did she unalive herself? To me, there is no way that I believe that she did this to herself. But again, why? What would be the motive? Why would Adam do this to Rebecca while his nephew is fighting for his life in the hospital? It just doesn't make sense. I'm definitely so interested to read all of your guys' takes on this case in the comments. Please leave all of your theories and thoughts and questions in the comments for me. You guys are always coming up with connections and theories I would never come up with in my head. So please leave all that for me in the comments. And while you're there, let me know what case you'd want to see me cover next. I love you guys so, so much. And I will see you tomorrow. And I do mean that. I know I did not post for 3 days. I've been a little sick. I'm so sorry, but I didn't really have a voice. So there wouldn't be anything for me to even say. But I'm feeling a little bit better. So I will 100% see you guys tomorrow. Love, love, love you so much.
He killed 2 people in cold blood and has gone viral on TikTok for being hot. There are edits all over TikTok of just Wade walking into the courtroom, and I guess there's a noticeable bulge in his pants. And the comments on the fan edit of him walking into court read, "It walked into the room before he did." And people are having a blast. There's another fan edit where he's walking into the courtroom in his suit, and there's 2 police officers watching him because, you know, he's a dangerous killer. But the song on this one goes, "As I walk," you know this song, "As I walk through the shadow of the valley of death, I take a look at my life and I realize there's nothing left." They think he's the Joker. And the comments read, "He walks in like he's about to lead a very important all-company staff meeting. He walks in like he's a model for Hugo Boss. The attorney has a thing for him for sure. He walked in like he's the attorney. He walks into the courtroom as if he's the judge." Heart emoji. Some people in the comments actually question his guilt. Some people believe that he's being framed.
A man is not guilty until proved innocent, and the thing about it is that I don't, I'm just a man sitting in jail, and it's not fair to me. I have a family, I have 2 children.
One comment reads, "What if he didn't do it and we kill him? And the death penalty won't bring them back? He deserves a chance at life with meaning, and his kids deserve to have their daddy around."
This little girl was kidnapped by this man who said that he was the chosen one by God and God wanted them to get married. If you haven't already heard of the kidnapping of Elizabeth Smart, then just buckle up, settle down, because this is going to be a wild one. Elizabeth Smart was only 14 years old when she was kidnapped. Up until then, she was living a really, really great life. She had a great family. She lived in a nice big house in Salt Lake City, Utah. Her family was Mormon, and religion was really, really important to her family and to Elizabeth. It was June 5th, 2002. Elizabeth and her younger sister, 9-year-old Mary Catherine, went to bed. The 2 of them shared a bedroom. And in the middle of the night, Elizabeth woke up to a strange man standing over her with a sharp weapon to her neck. And he told her, "Get out of bed, come with me, don't make a sound, or I will kill your entire family." At first, Elizabeth thinks that this is a dream, but she quickly realized that this is actually a living nightmare. She sees her little sister, Mary Catherine, in the bed next to her. She doesn't want to, scare her, have her whole family killed. So she complied with the man, and he walked her out of her front door. The man guides Elizabeth to walk up a nearby mountain where he already had a campsite waiting for her. And at this point, Elizabeth just tells him, "Please just kill me and get this over with." But he just gave her this really weird smile and said, "I'm not going to kill you yet." And it was around this point that Elizabeth realizes that she knows this man. She recognizes the man who has just kidnapped her. This man was Brian Mitchell, a total Jesus wannabe. He wore long white robes. He had long hair, long beard. He thought that he was a prophet, the chosen one by God, and that he was speaking to God. 7 months before Brian kidnapped Elizabeth, her mom and her younger sister were out shopping, and Brian came over to them asking them for some money. Not only did Elizabeth's mom give Brian money that day, but her parents also offered to give him a job and have him do some odd jobs around their house. I mean, how horrible, right? Her parents try to help out this man who's down on his luck, and he repays them by kidnapping their daughter. Well, back at their house, Elizabeth's younger sister, Mary Catherine, who she shared that bedroom with, turns out she was awake the entire time her sister was being kidnapped, so she runs to her parents' room to tell them what happened. They're frantic, obviously. They're searching the entire house, and that's when they found that the window in the kitchen, the screen had been cut, and that's how Brian got into their house. The police come, but they don't even treat it like a crime scene. They just let people walk all over the entire scene, just contaminating the entire thing. They question the little sister, and she tries to tell them everything that she can remember, but she also tells them that she knows the man's voice. She recognized the voice, but she couldn't remember where she had heard it from. Meanwhile, Brian has just made Elizabeth hike up this entire mountain. She's exhausted, to where he has a campsite waiting for her, and where his wife was also waiting for him and Elizabeth. Yes, this man is married to a woman who's just as messed up as he is. Her name is Wanda. She's also wearing a long robe. She has a headdress on. She makes Elizabeth undress in front of her and then put on one of the robes. Poor Elizabeth is just sitting on the ground and she's crying. Brian comes up to her and then performs some weird marriage ritual on her and then tells her that she is now his wife. This is all part of God's plan, and Elizabeth is the first of many wives he plans on kidnapping, essentially, before he essayed her for the first time. Brian then tied Elizabeth to a tree on a 20-foot leash, and he would keep her like that for weeks and weeks, barely feeding her or giving her any water. And the entire time that she's being held captive by these total freaks, his wife, Wanda, is jealous about how much attention Elizabeth is getting. Like, she's jealous of this 14-year-old girl. Like, she wants to be there being held captive and being essayed by her husband. And after being kidnapped by these sick individuals for 49 days, Brian tells Elizabeth that he plans on kidnapping her 14-year-old cousin named Olivia and also making her his wife. Brian attempted to break into Olivia's house, but was luckily stopped by Olivia's mother, who literally caught him cutting the screen of the window the exact same way he broke into Elizabeth's house. Brian did get away, and the families definitely believe that this was connected, but the police refused to believe that this had anything to do with Elizabeth's disappearance. After a few months of having Elizabeth in captivity, Brian and Wanda would bring her into town with them, the same city where they kidnapped her from, to help them beg for money as long as she was completely disguised. They even brought Elizabeth to a house party, which is super random, where this photo was taken of her. Even though Elizabeth was completely covered up except for her eyes when she went into town, there were times where she would be recognized because this case was huge and everyone knew who Elizabeth was and about her kidnapping. Like one time where they brought her to a library and the police were called because they said that Elizabeth Smart was here with these people in these robes, but the police only spoke to them for a couple minutes before leaving, and they never even told her parents about this potential sighting. At this point, it has been months since Elizabeth went missing, and the police are still looking for leads or suspects. They start looking at people that the family had hired to do work around the house, since they hired so many different people to do jobs, and those people will be familiar with like the layout and the family schedule. That's when the investigators first thought of Brian as a potential suspect because he had a criminal past. But instead of looking for Brian to try and question him, the police became fixated on one suspect, a local handyman named Richard Reese. They had no evidence against this man, Richard, but they were convinced that he was guilty. They would interrogate him intensely. They ran this man's name through the mud up until the day he died of a brain hemorrhage. And the police were so convinced that Richard was guilty of not only kidnapping but killing Elizabeth, even though they had no body and no evidence that she was dead, that they actually tried to close the case when Richard died. Luckily, they didn't, and then one night, Elizabeth's little sister, Mary Catherine, was just lying in bed, and then it just comes to her. She remembered how she recognized the man's voice that had kidnapped her sister. It just came to her with no explanation. She runs, she tells her parents that it was Brian Mitchell that kidnapped her sister, the homeless man that they gave $5 to that came and worked on their house at one time. And I do not know what's up with the cops in this case, but at first they literally refused to release Brian's name and photo to the public to keep an eye out for this guy. He might have a connection to Elizabeth Smart's disappearance. But once they finally did release it, Elizabeth Smart was found 9 months after she had been kidnapped. 2 separate calls came into 911 that Brian Mitchell was seen with a young girl at Walmart. They surrounded this Walmart. Brian had Elizabeth wearing this really terrible disguise, I'm not gonna lie. They had her in sunglasses and a really cheap wig. Brian and Wanda were arrested and Elizabeth could finally go back and be with her family. Wanda pled guilty but was released after serving only 9 years, you guys. She's out free right now, and last I heard she's actually living down the street from an elementary school. But Brian's trial took 8 years to start because he kept trying to play up the fact that he was crazy, and they could not determine for the longest time if he was even competent to stand trial. But when he did finally go to trial, Elizabeth, because she's so brave and so strong, she actually testified against him. He was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. To this day, Elizabeth Smart is seen as such an inspiration to so many people. I love these cases of survival. I love being able to share these cases with you guys. Elizabeth Smart is also a huge advocate for survivors of kidnapping and SA. And today you will be happy to know that she is very happy, and she's also a wife and a mother. It felt really nice to tell you guys a case with a happy ending today. We don't get a lot of those in true crime. Thank you guys so much for listening to Elizabeth Smart's story. Let me know all your guys' thoughts in the comments, and while you're there, please tell me what case you want to see me cover next. I love you guys so much, and I will see you tomorrow.
A new emotion. Wow.
This man locked his daughter in the basement for 24 years and forced her to have 7 of his children. It's one of the most notorious kidnappings in history and a crime that truly shocked the world. This man makes me feel ill. Josef Fritzl and his wife Rosemarie had 7 children, but Josef always had a very bizarre obsession with his one daughter, Elizabeth, and began essaying her when she was only 11 years old. Josef says that he chose Elizabeth because she was the daughter that most resembled his own mother. Like, yuck. His wife, Rosemarie, claims that she had no idea that this abuse was going on, but it is important to note that after they were married for about 10 years, Josef spent a year in prison for breaking into a woman's home and essaying her at knife point. So this woman definitely knew the man that she was married to. Elizabeth tried multiple times to escape her father's abuse by running away, but since she was a minor, she would always be brought back home by the police, no questions asked. So when Elizabeth turned 18, she was a legal adult now. She planned to move out. She had a job all lined up. She had all the plans set, but her father, Josef, could not allow this. It was shortly after Elizabeth turned 18, her father, Josef, asked her help bringing down a heavy door into their basement. For the past 6 years, Josef told his family that he was redoing the basement so he had a place to work, but what he was really doing was building a secret prison underneath the family home. And the door that he asked Elizabeth to help him bring down would be the door that she would be locked behind for 24 years. Elizabeth was locked down in the basement, no sunlight, no fresh air, nothing to do, no one to talk to. The only person she would see would be her father, Josef, her captor, when he would come downstairs to bring her small amounts of food and water and to essay her. Elizabeth's mother, Rosemarie, and the rest of the family are concerned about where Elizabeth went, so they went and reported her missing. So Josef forced Elizabeth to write a letter to the family saying that, she ran away, don't look for her. So her case was closed, but she was in the basement. She was in the basement and no one was looking for her. After 5 years of captivity, at the age of 23, Elizabeth gave birth to her first baby all alone, and this would be the first of 7 children she was forced to have with her own father. One of these babies was sadly born very sick. Elizabeth begged Josef to take the baby to the hospital, but he didn't because he thought it would blow his cover. So the baby sadly passed away after only being 3 days old, and then Josef put its body in the furnace. Josef did not think there was enough room in the basement for all these babies that Elizabeth was being forced to have, so Josef allowed Elizabeth to keep her 3 older children. But when she gave birth to the 3 younger children, Josef stole them from her, you guys, and then he would wrap them up, put them in a basket, and then put them on the front porch step for his wife Rosemarie to find. Then Josef and Rosemarie would raise these babies, and Josef would attach each baby with a little note from Elizabeth, their long-lost daughter, saying that she had this baby, but she was leaving it on the doorstep because she couldn't raise it. So Rosemarie was raising 3 of her grandchildren, but they were really the children of her daughter and her husband. And because Josef is such a sick individual. He would take photos of the 3 children that were allowed to live above ground, you know, doing normal things like swimming in swimming pools, playing in the snow, having birthday parties. And then he would take those photos and show them to the children that were being forced to live underground that had never even seen sunlight in their entire lives, to show them what they were like missing out on. And if you're wondering how Rosemary or any of the rest of the family ever found that all these children and missing Elizabeth were living in the basement, well, for one, they were banned from going down there. But he also rigged it so in case anyone ever actually did go down there, they wouldn't find it. So you see there's the stair. These are the stairs from like upstairs, downstairs, and this is a utility room, and this is where he would say he would work. And then this red door was hidden behind like a bookcase, so no one would see that there was this huge prison where all these people were being held captive. So in 2008, after Elizabeth has been locked up underground for 24 years, she's in her 40s now. Remember, she got locked underground when she was 18. Her oldest child, 19-year-old Kirsten, got seriously sick. Kirsten seriously needed medical attention or she probably wasn't going to survive. So again, Elizabeth begged Josef to take Kirsten to the hospital, but of course, at first he said absolutely not. But then he changed his mind because he probably realized that if she did die, what would he do with the body? Like, he couldn't just lift out a grown woman's body up the stairs of the basement and no one would see it. And then once he did do that, if he could do that, what would he do with it afterwards? So Josef did bring her to the hospital. At the hospital, Kirsten was in terrible condition, and the hospital was like really suspicious because there was no record of this person existing before she came into the hospital. She had white hair. Her skin was so pale, it was almost translucent. She was 19 years old, but honestly, guys, they were thinking this person was 40 years old because remember, she's never seen sunlight in her entire life. So the hospital actually contacts the police, and the police go there. They're trying to talk to Josef, but he's not giving anything up. He thinks he's really, really smart, and he thought he had total control and was so smart, in fact, that he went and got Elizabeth, his daughter, that he's had locked up for over 2 decades, and had her come out of the basement for the first time in 24 years to go talk to the police and clear everything up. So the police are now talking to Elizabeth, who also has white hair. She's in her 40s, but she looks 60. Like, everyone looked 20 years older than they were supposed to. Her skin is also pale as, you know, paper, and they're grilling Elizabeth, and she's not giving any answers either, but they're not taking no for an answer. They keep pushing her, and they're pushing Elizabeth until she broke down and finally confessed everything. The police, they go to the house, they find the cellar, they find the other children, and the interesting thing about this is the investigators that were in that cellar for, you know, not that long a time, they were just walking around it, finding these children. They were so traumatized by the sight of this like prison that these people were being held captive in that many of them needed therapy after. So just think about these grown men just in this cellar, this basement, this prison for a small amount of time needing therapy. Imagine how messed up everyone else was that was locked in there their entire lives pretty much. Elizabeth was 18 years old when she went down. She was in there for 24 years. She spent more time in that basement than she did out of the basement. Like, I'm 26 years old, being locked in the basement for 24 years, like, that's an entire lifetime for most of the people that are probably watching this video right now. So Josef is obviously arrested, and at first he tried to deny everything. He said that his relationship with his daughter was consensual, and that the children liked living in the cellar, but this obviously did not work, and eventually he did plead guilty on all charges and was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 15 years. He has spent most of his sentence so far in a hospital for the criminally insane, but he was transferred to real prison very recently in May of 2024, where he is now eligible for parole, but I doubt he will get it. But let me know what you think. Elizabeth and her 6 children are living under new identities in a small village somewhere in Austria, and I really, really do hope the best for them. They're living completely out of the public eye. They don't do interviews. I think we should respect whatever wishes they had. I know a lot of people try to show up to that village trying to interview them. That's gross. Leave them alone. All do need ongoing therapy, which is completely understandable. Also, Elizabeth, for a long time, held a lot of resentment against her mother, Rosemary, which is also completely understandable. I'm really, really interested to hear from Rosemary, though, if she ever does choose to do an interview, which I don't think she would, because I want to know what she thought when all this came to light and realizing that her missing daughter has been underground the entire time by the hands of her own husband. We do know that Elizabeth eventually did forgive her mother, and they apparently have a really, really strong, loving relationship, and I truly do hope the best for all of them. Please let me know all your thoughts on this case in the comments. You guys have been begging me to cover this case for the longest time. While you're in the comments, please let me know what case you want to see me cover next, and until then, I love you guys so much, and I will see you tomorrow.
This 2024 independent horror movie feels like a combination of a few high-profile slashers like Halloween and Scream, but still brings a little originality to the table as well. I just checked it out, so let's talk about it. I'm Ian Van Gool, your horror movie hype man. If you're a fan of horror movies, then smash that follow button. And today, we're talking about Bloodline Killer. The film follows Moira Cole, a mother of two who is trying to rebuild her shattered life after the murder of her husband at the hands of her deranged and obsessed cousin. This one doesn't do too much to break the mold of slasher films, but I did find it entertaining overall. There's a lot going on in the story, some of it works, some of it doesn't, but honestly it's one that I want to watch again because I feel like there's some plot elements that I didn't quite pick up on the first watch. There's a few recognizable faces in this: Shawnee Smith, Tyrese Gibson, Tara Manning, and Bruce Dern, and I thought they all did a pretty good job. The mask in this looks pretty cool, and there's some decent kill scenes. Again, it's not much different from most others, but if you're a fan of slashers or anyone in the cast, I say check it out. It's streaming on Tubi right now. If you've seen Bloodline Killer, then let me know what you think of it. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
You already know that the things that this man did were so evil, sick, and twisted when they could not even release all the details of his crime to the public because they were that horrific and disturbing. Jamie Osuna's dad was an abusive a-hole. He literally kicked Jamie's pregnant mom in the stomach when she was pregnant with Jamie, leaving Jamie with permanent damage when he was born. And then Jamie's mom left that abusive relationship and got into another one when she married Jamie's stepfather, Jeff, who was honestly probably 10 times worse. When Jamie was still an infant, the whole family was driving. Jamie was in the backseat in his car seat and he was crying because that's what babies do. And Jeff got so upset that Jamie was crying that he reached back into the backseat, opened the car door, pushed Jamie and his car seat out of the car door while the car was moving. And this gave Jamie permanent brain damage, and they did not even bring him to the hospital. Jamie's mom and stepdad ended up having their own children, and allegedly Jeff was like a really, really good dad to his biological children, but he still hated Jamie and did everything to make Jamie feel outcasted. When the family would all sit down for family dinner, all of them would eat together but Jamie. Jamie was forced to just sit there and watch everybody eat, and it was only after everyone was finished their dinner that Jeff would put Jamie's food on the floor and make him eat like a dog. Jamie is obviously a very messed up child because of this. When he was 12, he admitted that he used to put the family's cats in the freezer or the oven. And when Jamie was 15, he spent 4 years in juvie for stabbing a neighborhood kid. And after Jamie was released from juvie, he was 19, and a little bit later, he met his future wife at a house party. Jamie's wife does not want her name in the public, so the media just refers to her as Jane. Jane is a really loved, sweet, single mom. She's at this house party and she's dancing with another guy. Well, Jamie goes right up to the guy that Jane is dancing with and stabs him. And that's how Jamie met his future wife. Talk about red flags. Well, Jamie went to prison for this, obviously, but he only spent less than 1 year behind bars, and it was behind bars that him and Jane started a relationship. They would write letters back and forth. It was also during this prison sentence that Jamie began to get his face tattoos, including a Joker's smile. He really thinks of himself as a Joker. When Jamie was released from prison, Jane was actually the one to come pick him up, and they immediately went to a hotel to have a little bit of fun. It was supposed to be a one-time hookup, but that one-time hookup resulted in a pregnancy. Jamie says that he was really excited to be a dad. He wanted to step up and be a good man and have a family with Jane, so they got married. But sadly, the cycle of abuse is a real thing, and Jamie, who was once a victim of abuse, became the abuser. Jamie would physically abuse Jane, but it was also mental abuse, like psychological abuse. The most notable instance of this was one time Jamie and Jane were having a fight, and Jamie stole Jane's mother's ashes. And to this day, she has never gotten them back. You have to be one sick, twisted individual to mess with someone's loved one's ashes. Jamie would spend some time in and out of prison for this, but he was never locked up for long. It was only ever a couple months. And he would always come back to Jane apologizing, saying he was a changed man, and then Jane would take him back, but the abuse would continue. It actually wasn't until Jamie put his hands on one of Jane's kids that she had enough. She dumped his ass, sent him back to jail again, but he was released again, and then once he was out of prison, he began to harass, stalk, and threaten Jane. He would call Jane all hours of the day, threatening her life, and would even show up at her house. So one day, it was actually only 8 days after Jamie had just gotten out of prison again for laying his hands on one of Jane's kids, that he called Jane again. She thought that it was going to be the same old song and dance, and she picks up, but this time Jamie just says, "I just killed someone at the Morocco Hotel," and hung up. Jane obviously calls 911 to report this because who wouldn't, but they did nothing. They never went to the Morocco Motel to see if this was true. It actually took 5 whole days after this phone call for a Morocco Motel employee to go into the room and find Jamie's victim's body. In the motel room was the body of 37-year-old beloved mother of 6, Yvette Pena. She is a stranger to Jamie to this day. A motive is unclear, but what he did to her was brutal. Actually, most of the details about what Jamie did to Yvette has never been released to the public because they are that disturbing and horrific. 5 days later, Jamie was found and arrested, but he denied any involvement. Behind bars awaiting trial, Jamie continued to torment his now ex-wife Jane by calling her all the time. He was calling CPS to try and get her kids taken away from her. He would send her letters that he had written in blood and even sent her a smashed up dead rat through the mail. It was this time in prison awaiting trial that he got the rest of his face tattoos. Jamie spent 5 whole years behind bars waiting for his trial to start, 5 whole years of claiming that he was innocent. It actually wasn't until 3 days before his trial was supposed to start that Jamie did an on-camera interview with a reporter, and he blatantly just says that he did it and he would do it again. It was also during this interview that Jamie claims that he had more victims out there, at least 2 more victims, and that he started killing when he was 13 years old, but it has never been confirmed, and personally, I think he's lying. Following Jamie's confession, he was offered a plea deal to avoid the death penalty. That's what he did, and he was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Yvette's family would attend every single hearing, every single court appearance that Jamie had, and Jamie would torment her family by smiling at them and waving at them. Also, this one clip of Jamie while one of Yvette's loved ones are speaking, and I think I just have to play it for you now so you can see how messed up it is.
I've sat in this courtroom more than a dozen times, and all I've seen was a smile. But I do hope that one day that Osuna will have sorrow and remorse.
But this case does not end here, unfortunately. In prison, it was determined that Jamie was way too dangerous to have a cellmate until 2019. This is extremely controversial why this happened, how this happened, but 44-year-old Luis Romero, who was actually about to end his prison sentence and be released, was transferred to Jamie's prison and put in Jamie's cell, and less than 24 hours later, he would be found dead. This is incredibly disturbing, you guys, but somehow Jamie was able to create a makeshift sharp weapon which he used to cut out Luis's eyes, his fingers. He removed those. He removed part of his ribs, and then he also removed his head, and then also carved the Joker smile onto him. When the guards finally did find his body, Jamie was wearing a necklace that he had made of his body parts, you guys, and then in blood he wrote in the wall, "Ha ha 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 ha," all over the place, like he literally thinks he's the Joker. And then he also wrote on the wall, "I am the man with 1,000 faces." Jamie has still not gone to trial for this crime. They were going back and forth whether or not he was competent enough to stay on trial, but I do believe it was determined that he is competent. It's really, really fuzzy, the details. I did see that they are shooting for a trial at the beginning of 2025, and they are trying to get him the death penalty this time. This case was really, really scary, so if you guys are still here, thank you, because I don't know how you guys made it through it. I barely did. I love you guys so, so much. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments, and while you're there, please let me know what case you'd want to see me cover next. I love you guys so, so much, and I will see you tomorrow.
Celebrities who committed terrible crimes. Actor Phil Lewis is best known as Mr. Mosby from The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody and The Sweet Life on Deck. However, roughly 10 years before both shows, his life was headed for the worst. In December of 1991, Phil was involved in a car accident where he struck a woman head-on while heavily intoxicated. The woman he struck sadly did not make it, and this landed him 5 years in prison. However, due to Phil's good behavior and agreeing to do theatrical plays where he highlights the dangers of alcohol and drug abuse, his sentence was reduced by 4 years. He was also ordered to do 2 years of probation and 350 hours of community service.
I won't be able to see myself having fun.
But driving a motor vehicle is not fun. It's serious business. Now, have you buckled your seatbelt?
I was going to, but this outfit just wrinkles so easily, so I thought...
Just do it.
But my outfit...
It's the law!
Whatever happened to Dan Bilzerian? The downfall of Dan Bilzerian might seem like a simple case of somebody who just faked their way to the top, but if you're not familiar, there's much more to this story, including the FBI and a major scandal. Throughout the 2010s, Dan Bilzerian became one of the biggest influencers in the entire world for flaunting his extravagant lifestyle, hanging out with supermodels, and overall just doing things that most dudes wish they could do. Eventually, he would launch his company Ignite, but little did he know this would be the beginning of the end. After a bad year, he decided to fire his VP, who then turned around and sued him and Ignite for wrongful termination. In court, this ex-VP would air out all of the problems with the company, including that Dan's lifestyle is not real at all. His multi-million-dollar mansion was simply rented because he couldn't afford it, and this is when people began to peel back the layers of what was really going on. But the company magically started to improve, which would ultimately lead the FBI to get involved, and what they found would begin the avalanche that would end Dan Bilzerian's career. Like and follow for part 2.
When I heard this was going to be a divisive movie, I assumed that some would like it and others would not. I didn't expect to battle internally with myself over whether I'm a fan of it or not. So let's talk about it. Spoiler free, of course. I'm Ian Van Gool, your horror movie hype man. If you love horror movies, then smash that follow button. And today, we're talking about Cuckoo. A 17-year-old girl is forced to move with her family to a resort where things are not what they seem. So we're heading straight into the positives for this one. The first half of it is fantastic. There's mystery to it, there's suspense, there's a couple creepy scenes, and some what the fuck moments. I was into it. The acting is great. Hunter Schafer and Dan Stevens, they both kill it in their roles, but the entire cast is pretty solid. The cinematography is great. The entire movie is made really well. Now the second half is where it started to lose me. The story itself is pretty original, and I enjoyed it up until we start getting an idea of what's really going on. From there, it started dragging, and it just got silly. By the end, it felt like something you'd see on an episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or something similar. Again, it's a very well-made movie, and I think it's a good movie overall, but it was riding high for a while for me, and then it just took a nosedive. Now that's just my thoughts and feelings after watching it one time, and I'm hoping it's a movie that I enjoy the whole way through on a rewatch. But please don't let my thoughts on it deter you from going to see it. Go see it, form your own opinion on it, and I hope you love it. Cuckoo is currently in theaters. If you've seen it, then let me know your spoiler-free thoughts in the comments. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Forbidden Places You're Not Allowed to Visit Part 3. The Chapel of the Ark of the Covenant is found in Ethiopia and is believed to be the final resting place of the legendary Ark of the Covenant that holds the 10 Commandments. The Ark is protected by a single high priest who is charged with its care and preservation. Interestingly, he's the only one who's allowed to actually look at the Ark and is the only one who knows exactly how to locate it within the church. The Bank of England vaults are located beneath London, England, and is the central bank of the United Kingdom. It's a massive space greater than that of the third tallest building in the city, Tower 42, and takes keys 3 feet or almost a meter long to open. The near impossibility of entering this vault is necessary, as it has an estimated 156 billion pounds worth of gold deposits that reside there. The names of employees working at the vaults are kept secret.
After a child went missing for 11 days, this is the moment when everyone held their breath. It was August 2014. Karina Chikitova was 4 years old, living in the Sakha Republic in Russia. She loved dogs and spent a lot of her time with the puppies in the local area. One she took a particular shine to was an Alsatian named Naida. On the day in question, Karina was outside and her mum was indoors doing her daily tasks. It was a pretty safe community, and the family felt comfortable letting little Karina play outside on her own. Now, Karina at this point saw her dad heading out of the village, so she tried to run up to catch up with him. However, she just simply couldn't keep up. She was a very, very little girl. Soon, he was out of sight and she was lost. Although it was summer in the Siberian wilderness, it got increasingly colder towards the evening. As day turned to night, the temperature plummeted below 0. There was also the added danger of wolves and bears in the forest. Now, Karina's mum and Nan suddenly noticed that the child had vanished. They were obviously concerned, but they actually at this point presumed that Karina had gone with her dad. They were horrified later that night when the dad came home without the little girl. Like something from a Disney film though, Naida the dog stayed close by the side of Karina. The dog made sure to keep the little girl warm during the harsh nights. The pair both got drinking water from the rivers. Meanwhile, a huge search was underway for the child. 100 volunteers banded together to scour the local area for any sign of her. He even used helicopters, but after 9 days, there was still no sign. Her family feared the worst. Suddenly, though, the dog came back to the village. Nader led the villagers to where the pair had been. However, the dog seemed confused and lost, but was clearly trying to tell everybody something. It wasn't until day 12 that they had a shock. In amongst some grass, they spotted the arms of a child. It was Karina, nestled in to try and keep warm. She was thin and covered in insect bites, but miraculously she had survived. She was rushed to hospital and received urgent medical care. She also told the adults of how the dog had protected her from the harsh weather conditions and the wildlife. A statue of the pair was erected in the city to celebrate the amazing survival story.
This Paris situation just got even worse. Immediately after billions of people chose to laugh at Jesus Christ at the Olympics, some pretty insane things have been happening in Paris. New information has just emerged about how an Olympic surfer was told to remove his picture of Jesus from his board, or else he'd be disqualified from the competition. There is more to the story, but first, did you see the footage of the total blackout of the city of Paris the night after the opening ceremony? You tell me, is this a coincidence? Because one thing no one can deny, and it's this: Christians will not be silent. Thousands of believers arrived on the streets of Paris on Sunday, praising the name of Jesus Christ. And I am going to make a strong statement now. I believe millions are currently boycotting the Olympics, and I want to know, are you one of them? If you are, please tell me in the comments, and if you are new to the channel, please do subscribe.
Alex Hurst, the creator of Gravity Falls, said that it can only get another season under certain conditions. Alex Hurst the other day just uploaded this story to his Instagram of him using Seuss as a puppet, pretty much talking about how greedy Disney is, talking about how they are billionaires, and their animators barely get paid enough to just barely make it by. And if y'all do not know, Alex Hurst does not own Gravity Falls anymore. That's owned by Disney. Right now, Alex Hurst is currently working with a protest called the Stand With Animation protest. They're standing shoulder to shoulder, and they want their demands to be met for a fair deal for the human beings who create the worlds and characters we all love. I completely agree with Alex Hurst, not only in the Western community, but literally all across the world globally. Animators are severely underpaid. They're pretty much what Alex Hurst is saying in a matter of words: unless Disney can meet what he's demanding and what these animators deserve to be paid, because let's be honest, they're not getting paid nearly enough, he's not going to want to make another season. Even if it means that the fans want another season, he's not going to want to put an entire team through literally making ends meet, working hours on end. I guess we're going to just have to all tag Disney and try and have them be better.
The Supreme Court ruling, the immunity thing. Did you hear about this?
I don't understand how the Supreme Court...
Problem is, I think we do understand it, and we're like, there's no way that's what it means.
Presidential candidates.
Right. They can act on any official act that goes beyond the legal bounds. President is immune to any litigation or anything.
And that is crackhead ruling.
Oh, now Biden can send SEAL Team 6 to go assassinate President Trump.
And it'd be completely legal.
And it's this kid, Harry Sison, definitely bought out by the Democratic Party, but he says that he's not. He tweeted, according to the Supreme Court, Biden can now send SEAL Team 6 to take them out. He could send the military to take out Trump. It's actually exactly what Vladimir Putin has done, for himself, has made these laws and regulations that protects him and keeps him president forever.
It's like now any president could be a felon.
It doesn't make any sense. It's craziness. Why, in a country so esteemed in the world, with hundreds of millions of people living in it, are we reduced to this pairing? But also now opening ourselves up to more liability in the future, that anybody that can run can be a felon. Why would we elect that?
The Gould family and I are off to New York City for the next few days, so there was no better time than now to revisit this 1980 slasher. I'm Ian Van Gool, your horror movie hype man. If you love horror movies, then you better hit that follow button. And today, we're talking about Maniac. A psychopath goes on a killing and mutilation spree in New York City. Now, I know this movie is well known and talked about, but I still say it's one of the best, most underrated, and disturbing serial killer movies. It hooks you in from the opening scene and you stay locked in and anxious, waiting to see what happens next. Tom Savini created the special effects, so they definitely don't disappoint. He also plays a role in one of the most memorable scenes in the film. Maniac is shocking, it's brutal, and it still holds up 44 years later. If you've never seen this classic, then I definitely recommend you check it out. It's streaming on Tubi right now. If you've seen Maniac, then let me know what you think of it. But thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
This is the most insane documentary I've seen this year by far. It's based on a true crime case I'd never heard of before, one that had me visibly shocked throughout the entire runtime. My name's Rookie, I love documentaries, and this is American Nightmare. So this is a new documentary series on Netflix that was released this year, and I binge watched the entire thing in one night. I don't want to give you any details about this plot that isn't in the summary above my head, but as you can see, this is a film about a home invasion and a kidnapping, and the incident itself was dubbed in the press as the real-life Gone Girl case. So when it comes to horror movies, I don't think that Netflix is the greatest platform for horror. In fact, I rarely watch horror movies on Netflix, but I do watch a lot of documentaries on Netflix, and I think that Netflix are very good at making documentaries. And I think that they're one of the best distributors for documentaries as well. And I think American Nightmare is just another case where Netflix have knocked it out of the park when it comes to documentaries. So the documentary itself puts you through so many different emotions. The documentary is quite powerful in points where it can make you angry, and it can make you really quite sad as well. But it's also confusing and shocking. When you watch this documentary, you'll realise that this, or certain parts of this, could have been prevented. And the way that certain people were treated in this situation is abhorrent. But this is a truly insane story. It is wild. And we can't help but feel absolutely awful for everybody involved. So I have a 2-year-old and I have to get up really early for work. So at night, when it comes to watching films, we only either get through one film or one episode of a documentary series. But this documentary was so good that we watched the entire thing in one night. Go watch this documentary. I loved it. It is the most insane documentary I've watched this year.
Have you guys ever heard of Ethan Couch, the teenager that killed 4 people but got away with it because it was determined that he was just too rich to go to jail? It was June 15th, 2013, the day before Father's Day. 24-year-old Brianna Mitchell's car broke down on the side of the road right in front of the home of Eric and Holly Boyles. Their 21-year-old daughter Shelby was also at her parents' house. It was summer break, so she was there visiting them, especially since the next day was Father's Day. So all 3 of them came outside of their house to help Brianna with her broken down vehicle. And at the same time, youth pastor Brian Jennings was also driving down the same road, and he also pulled over to help. These were just good Samaritans just trying to help out a 24-year-old girl whose SUV had broken down when Ethan Couch came barreling down the road. So who is Ethan Couch? Ethan Couch is a spoiled, wealthy, entitled 16-year-old boy who had little to no parental supervision. That evening, Ethan and his friends decided to go to Walmart to steal beer. They had a huge party at Ethan's house. They're drinking beer, taking shots, playing games before Ethan decides that he's going to drive to a convenience store. Ethan and 7 other teenagers loaded into the back of Ethan's dad's truck. They're driving down the road. Ethan is speeding. He's swerving lanes. He's playing chicken with other cars in the road before swerving onto the shoulder and running over Brianna Mitchell, Pastor Brian Jennings, and Shelby and Holly Boyles. All 4 people did tragically pass away, and one of Ethan's friends was ejected from his vehicle and is now permanently paralyzed. He's unable to speak or move at all. And 16-year-old Ethan fled the scene. He just took off, but I guess he was so intoxicated he passed out drunk in a nearby ditch. It was determined that not only was Ethan using substances that night, but he was 3 times the legal limit when he crashed that car. Ethan was arrested. He was being charged as an adult, and they were seeking 20 years in prison. But get this, Ethan had some fancy lawyers that his rich parents paid for, and their defense strategy was that Ethan was suffering from affluenza, meaning that he was too rich to know right from wrong, so he could not be held responsible for this. And it worked. It worked, guys. Talk about rich white privilege, right? Ethan got away with killing 4 people and paralyzing someone for the rest of their lives and walked away with only probation. And he had to spend a teeny bit of time in a fancy, really fancy, nice rehab center that, guess what, was paid for by taxpayers' money, meaning that you paid for that. And after being released from rehab, Ethan went right back to partying. Ethan went to little house parties with his little high school friends, and videos of him partying were posted on social media, which was a huge violation of his probation. So Ethan knew that he was going to get in a lot of trouble. So guess what Ethan did? Just talk about great parenting, right? Ethan convinced his mom to flee the country to Mexico, where Ethan continued to party. He was only found and arrested after he placed a pizza delivery order from his cell phone because I guess he's also too rich and too dumb to know that they could track his cell phone if you flee the country. After violating his probation and also fleeing the country, Ethan Couch was only sentenced to serve 2 years in prison before being released. So Ethan Couch is free right now. Spent 2 years in prison for killing 4 people, permanently paralyzing someone, violating his probation, and fleeing the country. It's also worth noting that affluenza is not something that is recognized as a real condition or a real defense strategy. This was just made up, and it's really upsetting because it now sets a precedent that other people will be able to use this in the future. Please let me know all your thoughts on this case in the comments, you guys, and I'm sure you guys' opinions are going to be really, really strong, and trust me, I'm right there with you. This is extremely, extremely frustrating. While you're in the comments, please tell me what case you want to see me cover next. I love you guys so, so much, and I will see you tomorrow.
They call him the Deadpool killer, the Joker. People want to be his Harley Quinn. But when Wade shows up to court with his new suit, new haircut, and new face tattoos, his attorney sits down next to him, takes one look at the side of Wade's face, and he looks genuinely disgusted by his own client. He shakes his head and he whispers to the co-counsel, and he just looks grossed out. Now, that moment of the attorney being disgusted by his own client has gone viral online, as well as another moment that Wade shares with another one of his attorneys, a blonde female attorney. He is leaning closer to whisper something, which is kind of what you do in court. You can't really speak loudly, but that moment has been romanticized by some people on TikTok because they keep comparing this scene to the scene of Harley Quinn and Joker from Suicide Squad. It's likely that some of these netizens have a sexual interest in those who commit crimes. It usually manifests in those who believe that they can change someone, that someone is so evil and is so willing to kill, but they will go to the ends of the earth to, I guess, protect the ones that they love, that only they can heal the inner child of the killer and nurture them. They think that they're living in their own dark romance novel, but no, you're living in a true crime documentary because you're gonna be next.